everybody. Welcome back. My name is Kathleen Collins. I'm a violinist in the Cleveland Orchestra, and you are joining me on the next part of my program, Music and Literature. We've been talking about stories and how they relate to a piece of music that I've been playing for you over the last few sessions. We're specifically concentrating on the story of Red Riding Hood, which might be a familiar story to everyone. There are different versions of the story, so you may not have heard this particular version. So far, we've gotten through the beginning and the middle of our story. We've reached the crucial climax in our story. That's a very important key part of the middle parts of stories. And we're trying to see what happens to Little Red Riding Hood at the end of the story now. So I'm going to read to you the last climactic sentence where we finished off the middle part of the sentence of the story, and we're going to continue on with the ending. Little Red Riding Hood ran straight out the open door. "Help! Help! A wolf!" cried Little Red Riding Hood. It happened that a hunter who had been after that wily wolf for days was in the woods nearby. He had followed the wolf's footprints all the way up to the path to Grandmother's house. When the hunter heard Little Red Riding Hood's cries for help, he raised his gun as quick as a wink and shot the wolf dead as he was leaping through the front door of her grandmother's house. Little Red Riding Hood and the hunter went inside to find poor grandmother rising to her feet, covered with dust from head to toe. Little Red Riding Hood ran to her arms for a comforting hug. When she heard about their narrow escape from the wolf, Grandmother insisted on a party to thank the kind hunter. Little Red Riding Hood, Grandmother, and the hunter sat down at the kitchen table and shared the basket of good things to eat. Forever after, Little Red Riding Hood never left the path when she walked in the woods. Very nice. So the story was resolved. We have an ending that works, and that's one of the main points of the ending of stories, right? We need to resolve all of the problems and the conflicts that happened during the middle section of the story. So what happened actually at the end? Well, in the third part of the story, we met another new character who helped us resolve the big problem of the wolf, right? It was the hunter. So the hunter came with his gun, shot the wolf dead. The problem was resolved for Red Riding Hood. That's how this particular version ends. Now, sometimes the stories don't end exactly great for the main character. It could have been that the wolf gobbled up Red Riding Hood and caught her. That would have also been an ending, just not the nice ending that we wanted. Might have been a nice ending for the wolf, however. The other thing that happens most of the time at the ends of stories is that you see the main characters return, but they've changed a little bit. They've evolved. Most of the time they learn some lessons from the problems that they faced going through. So what kind of lessons, this is a good exercise for you, what kind of lessons do you think that Red Riding Hood might have learned? Were there any lessons the wolf learned or grandmother? There's lots of decisions that were made in this story that were probably not the best things, and maybe our characters learned some lessons from all that stuff that happened with the wolf. We will hope so. Let's see what the ending of our musical story sounds like. Again, remember we reached a climax in the middle part of our story, and we need to resolve that climax. So that's what the ending is all about here. I'm going to play, again, the climax, the middle section, climax. Then we'll go on to the end of the story and see what you notice. So what did you notice? One thing that it should be really clear to you is that you probably heard our main theme return. So right after the climax happens, you've got these big chords. And then we hear our main theme. Isn't that cool? Just like at the beginning of the piece. Now, it does wrap up a little bit differently. It's kind of like our characters have learned a lesson. It all wraps up in a big flurry. There's a little bit of celebration, celebratory kind of atmosphere to it. We call this a coda at the end of our piece. It wraps everything up after the return of our main themes. So here's the coda. Resolved, just like our written story of Little Red Riding Hood resolved. What I'm going to do now to finish things up, I would like to play the entire musical story for you one last time. You can either think of the story of Little Red Riding Hood along with it, or you can think of your own story. I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions, though, to think about, too. We talked about how story structure has kind of been the same all the way from 3,000 years ago until now. Why do you think that is? Why does story structure work the way it does? How does that help the drama of the story to maintain a structure like that? Can that structure be changed and still call it a story? I think there are some experimental stories out there that you can find and read and see if it works. And it's true of music too. There are semi-story structure music pieces that might work, that are a little bit experimental, that pull and push against the edges of that structure. It would be interesting too for you to try to write your own story using that structure of and those elements, including those elements of beginning, middle, and end, like we talked about. And if any of you know and are familiar with how to write music, either you can read music yourself or you play an instrument, you can experiment around with trying to write your own musical story too, like that, trying to use all those same elements that we talked about. I would be really thrilled if I got some stories sent to the Cleveland Orchestra sometime, either written stories or musical stories. That would be really great. So here's the musical story one more time. Hope you enjoy it, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Bye. Bye.